All right, so we are now streaming live on YouTube. We are still waiting on our chair. Pam Holman has been trying to connect with her laptop. I think she's trying again. Might be with her cell phone.
Oh, we got somebody now. There she is. Hi, Pam. I can't hear her. She can't hear us, maybe. No, she's
there.
Hi, guys. I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulty. So I switched over to my phone. But Tim, I don't think I can see, hang on, more than just a couple. I won't be able to see everybody when we're going through discussion. Hang on.
Yeah, so we have 5 members: Dave Huff, Andy Brown, George Tarlas, Tom Pelican, and Tony Chow. So we have a quorum.
Okay, so you want me to go ahead and start?
Yeah, if you're ready. Yep,
yeah, what I just want to make you aware of is that I'm going to be relying on you because I won't be able to see everybody. If somebody should raise a hand, I can get up to 4 people on the device that I'm using up on my screen at one time. Okay, so here we go. Ready? Okay, so hi everybody, good evening and welcome to the Public Works Commission meeting for the month of August 2020. I hereby call this meeting to order. And Mr. Randick, it sounds like you've already taken the roll.
That's correct.
Okay, so then we'll just get right to it and we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections or amendments? Hearing none, do you see any hands, Tim?
Nope.
Okay, so with that, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as written for the July 2020 Public Works meeting?
I'll approve.
I will second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The minutes are approved as written for the July 2020 Public Works Commission meeting. We are now. Go ahead.
Quick, who seconded that? I got.
Sorry, Tim. That was Andy.
Okay, I got it.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, we are now on to new business. And the first item on our new business is with the resignation after 19 years of service to our city and community on the Public Works Commission. Mr. Herman Metz has resigned. And with his resignation, we have an opening for the seat of Vice Chairman of the Public Works Commission. And do I have anyone who would like to nominate themselves or a fellow commission member as chairman of this commission, vice chairman of this commission?
Don't everybody yell at once. This is always one of those odd things, you know.
So just to ease everyone's concerns on the commission, you know, the vice chair role, you know, we typically don't utilize that very often, but in a case where our current chairman, our current aldermanic representative, if for some reason Alderman Holman was no longer to serve, say she, you know, moved out of the city or had to resign for health reasons or anything like that, until a new vice chair would be appointed, they would, you know, basically, if we had any agenda items, have to take that role of basically running the meeting. So it's not something that gets utilized very often, but has to be that, you know, safety catch in case just such an occurrence. So we're not going to be calling you, you know, 5 days a week and having you come out to different stuff. It's a pretty low profile thing if you happen to volunteer or become the vice chair.
David, you obviously don't want it.
Oh, I'm fine. I'll do it. Yes, okay. I'm
I
gonna
mean,
draft.
the only reason I'm saying is you got more time in. I would do it too. It doesn't make any difference, but I'm kind of the low man on senior.
Okay, I was thinking about that. Yeah, I probably
Yeah.
am the plank holder here now. So yeah,
You're
go
the
ahead.
natural.
Yeah, I probably, yeah. Okay, I'll volunteer.
So, so Tim, we take a vote on this?
Yep.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve Mr. Dave Huff as Vice Chairman of the Public Works Commission?
I approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All
Charles,
in
second.
favor? All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Huff, for taking on the role of Vice Chairman to our commission. We appreciate that very much, sir.
Okay, David, good job.
Do we clap now?
Yeah. You got the rest of the meeting, Dave, so we're all gonna go get drinks now. No.
Okay, are we ready to move on, Tim?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so next on under new business, we have agenda item, the annual snow removal program. Tim, do you want to provide the background information there, please?
Yeah, so the city of Town and Country utilizes on-call snow removal service, and we've done that for decades now. So as part of our snow removal program, historically, we have had multiple vendors. Basically, those are typically due to the capabilities of each vendor, what vehicles they have available, what staffing and manpower they can supply to us. So in an effort to reduce some of our costs and to keep some of our routes consistent, for this year, we're looking to renew an annual snow removal contract with T Hill Construction and T Hill Construction alone. Last 2 years, we utilized Krupp as well. We started with Krupp in 19, last year, 19 into 20. We greatly reduced their presence in town just based off of their equipment, their manpower issues, and then their price. So as you can see in the price breakdown that was attached, what T Hill can provide us with a 1 ton or 1.5 ton with spreaders at $120 to $124 per hour. Krupp would only be able to provide us a 2.5 ton dump truck with a spreader, which is not efficient. It's not a good way to control material going out. And then we've had numerous issues with quality in the areas that they were in. So this year being one of the first years, we are looking to obviously renew the contract for its third and final year. And this year will just be with T Hill Construction.
Further discussion?
Tim, the rates are the same as last year? Or was
That's
there?
correct. That's
Okay.
correct. Same rates. So, and these are the rates since the bid opening in 2018. So they felt consistent. We've kept them consistent for 3 years.
This is Andy. Is there any backup if for some reason this contractor has issues? Can you call others to pull the weight, or is that you need to do way up front?
Yeah, so we have in-house resources that we can use, and we have the ability to have additional contractors on an emergency basis
Okay.
if we need to have come in and fill in. So what we found previously is usually with different vendors, MT Specialty, Krupp, some of the other previous contractors, the reliability of the equipment and or staffing was hit and miss. So you kind of needed the belt and suspenders option for snow removal. With T Hill as a contractor, they routinely purchase new equipment. And we have never had equipment breakdowns and or issues with that vendor. So we're very confident in their ability to provide us those resources. They also provide this service for Wildwood. So, and a few other communities and other commercial businesses. So we don't feel like we would be jeopardized by only going with this one contractor.
Yeah. And they haven't had any problems last couple of years.
No,
Price is the same. You know, I think it's a slam dunk.
Is your best gauge that they have
There
the
he is.
manpower to continue doing a good job despite having other municipalities, whether they've signed recently?
Yeah, so those are consistent vendors that they've had for over a 3-year period. So those same municipalities they serviced while they had been doing our city in 2019 and 20 and 18. So, and prior to having the full contract, they were the secondary contractor that we had used previous years as well. So, yeah, their fleet is fairly large. It's something that they devote a lot of focus on. They also have their own in-house diesel mechanic garage called Cutting Edge, I think is the garage. So they have the ability to respond to all of their areas if there is ever any equipment issues, which is not a common event.
Sounds like they're the right people.
So because Tom and myself are obviously out on site the entire time that the vendors are here that are working to do the snow removal events, if we felt that there was a concern or an issue, one of performance or two of price, we would definitely have multiple vendors. But because we want to provide the continued good service, that we always get positive feedback from everyone of how great of a job we do in Town and Country with our roadways, and we want to keep that standard, is the reason we're proposing to go with this one vendor.
So obviously depends on weather, but approximately how much was spent last year on snow removal?
I don't have that dollar figure directly in front of me. I think Pam was looking at it earlier. I think we generally try to budget roughly $130,000 annually for snow removal. Typically 30,000 or 35,000 in that range is usually for de-icing salt and or calcium chloride for chemicals. And then we have another $100,000 in manpower. So as Pam was referencing, I think in like 2017, we probably spent like 40 grand total.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we have worse years, obviously we're in the 150 or, it's all based on quantity of events, number of events and length of events.
Yeah, the numbers are consistently inconsistent if you're trying to take a read on precipitation.
Right.
So Tim,
Makes
with
sense.
T Hill, we do, this is just a portion of their organization. Do we have other ongoing projects with them right now with road construction or other projects?
Yeah, so T Hill Construction is also our on-call roadway contractor, so that if we have any roadway maintenance, pothole patching, concrete slab work, ditch work, brush clearing, anything like that, they provide those services for us. They also regularly bid on other construction projects that we have out. So they are awarded and bid on our stormwater projects. They're, when, every third or fourth one that they bid for. And then they also bid on other construction projects like roadway work and trail work. So.
I think,
Go
go ahead. No, you. Go
So
ahead.
I was gonna say, we have several, they have several irons in the fire, but that also, helps give the city, the ability to leverage, the need for service, that we then become a priority as opposed to, kind of an afterthought or just a small, little detail or an afterthought, that just trying to pick up a few extra dollars by sending two guys in with a truck, and it's not really a main focus of their organization.
Gotcha.
Well, I like everything I'm hearing, so I make a motion to approve. It's nice to be priorities, so it sounds like we are, and it sounds like we do a good job.
Yes,
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. We'll move that forward to the Board of Aldermen. Are you up to speed, Tim?
I am. I'm good.
Move on. Okay. The next item on our agenda is you've all should have received a copy of the draft and ordinance amending certain sections of our municipal code related to city engineer and the director of public works. The mayor will be bringing this draft forward to the Board of Aldermen in the very near future, and he asked that our commission take a look at the language and weigh in. The floor is open for discussion. Or Tim, did you want to actually, before we open for discussion, do you have some state information or sister municipality information that you'd like to share at this time?
Yeah, so we did a little research just for some inquiries of the mandate or need for a city to have either a city engineer that's a PE or a director of public works that is a PE. And then, so there is some opine from the at time Attorney General William Webster from 1991 that basically gives a rendering that if a city is not directly performing design work or associated or related engineering renderings or engineering design work or components related to it, that other than what may be allotted from a city charter or code of ordinances, a state statute does not require a director of public works to have a PE or the requirement of a city engineer. So most of basically everything that we do, and there are some municipalities where there's not many, but there's a few that the directors of public works are not licensed PEs. So the redundancy of the city engineer and what we currently require a director of public works to be a PE, you kind of, again, you have that position filled by a staff member. That staff member is doing the same processes that previously a city engineer would have done, that hasn't been filled for a number of years. So as far as state statutes go, we're still in compliance. We would be in compliance to remove the language of city engineer, and we are still accomplishing the same goals that the city has. We do have, which this commission previously reviewed and approved, an on-call engineering services contract, so that if either the Board of Aldermen or the Planning and Zoning Commission or there was directive of wanting an additional evaluation, we have that contract in place that we can go to our on-call engineering contractor to do that review for us, whether it's a a traffic engineer or an additional study for something that's presented by a developer or a builder, we have that ability. Even now with the vacancy of our current, Director of Public Works position. So we have those mechanisms in place.
Thanks, Tim, for that information. And I just wanted to add a couple of more data points. As you can see from the language, the code was established in 75 for our city, codified in 1989. And I wanted to just share with you from 1984 to 1998, we did have a city resident fill this position, but the position has not been filled since 1998. And then we looked at our surrounding cities to understand how they approach this. And the following cities that I'll just run through a short list here, they do not have a resident engineer appointed by the mayor or the Board of Aldermen. And those are Glendale, University City, Ellisville, Chesterfield, Brentwood, Shrewsbury, De Pere, St. Anne, Creve Coeur, and Clayton. Cities that are important to note there are Chesterfield, who has a population of nearly 48,000 residents and about 33 square miles. Town and Country is 11,000 residents, 12 square miles. Clayton has 16,000 residents, 15 square miles. Creve Coeur has 18,000 residents and 10 square miles. So those are just some data points as you consider the language of this amended draft. Open for discussion.
Go ahead, Dave.
For the benefit of everybody else, I was drafted as the first city engineer in 1983 when we doubled in size, just to give everybody a little bit of background here. And at that time, it was a requirement that the city engineer, there was not a director of public works in that, the city engineer had a PE, and that was the qualification I had as a civil engineer with a PE in the state of Missouri. So then I was drafted $1 a year. They still owe me $3 from 83 to 86. So, and during that period of time, we put all the building on hold. So we just froze the operation of the planning and zoning or really cut it way back, because we weren't going to hear any proposals to build anything new until we had something to give to the people who were submitting. In other words, we had to have our own requirements. And that's what I and a handful of other people spent many evenings grinding this out and coming up with the ordinances we had for the entire city so they could become a larger city. Then, and after that, then there was a change in the body politic as far as that goes. So Hal Schuchman, who was the mayor at that time, Snyderman started the whole thing, and then Hal Schuchman took it over, and Hal did a hell of a lot of work. And so we went ahead and put together what we have dealing with here. As you know from previous meetings we've had, and I pointed out that we somewhere along the line, somebody just threw the books away or whatever it was, and we have not been following what we agreed to, which is a rather sad thing, because this particular style of assessing the environment that you have in to do the proper planning and so forth like that, it involves the geology and so forth. And the process then is you go in, look at what you want to develop, you look at the whole watershed or the whole area to find out where the rivers and creeks are going and all those things that we really don't want to try to build upon. And then we go ahead and declare those as conservation zones or places that are common ground in terms of when you do a trust for a neighborhood. Then when you do that, then that leaves you with the land that is a good candidate for construction as determined by a combination of the lay people on the Planning and Zoning Commission and the advice of the engineer who is supposed to represent the essentially geological aspects and things like that, so that we don't try to go ahead and put things in the wrong place. Well, obviously we did not do that, and therefore we have a nice backlog in this particular commission here of about what, 13 million, Tim, or whatever it is.
9
Huh?
9 million in
9 million.
stormwater projects.
Yeah, okay. So that we are essentially going back and fixing things that we should not have done in the first place. So the idea is that we're going to go ahead and over time get wiser in our decisions and so forth, so that we don't go ahead and do things that Mother Nature doesn't like. So that's essentially the reason for it. The concern that I have is that as a $1 a year person, I'm not subject to being hired or fired by the city of Town and Country. And so the Director of Public Works is in a position where he can be hired and fired. And therefore, so that may inhibit his giving an honest engineering opinion on any matter that comes down the road. For fear of being whatever, pressured, being fired or whatever it was, and things of that nature there. So I want to make sure that when we do this, that we go ahead and establish a position. We can call it the Director of Public Works. We can call it the city engineer, but we got to make our mind up one or the other and define exactly then what that has, what are the duties, responsibilities, and other things that define that position, because right now it is not particularly well defined. Tim does a lot of work in this area, and Tim is not a PE. He could become a PE if he has 8 years of experience and he passes the test and everything else like that. But he administers HR Green, who has all the PEs we need to go ahead and stamp what we're doing. So I'm thinking that we need to do two things. We need to pick the name, one or the other. We don't need both. But I think we also need to go ahead and have an assistant or deputy, whatever we call this, either assistant or deputy Director of Public Works, or a city engineer, whichever we choose, so that we can go ahead and really have the expertise of Tim and the management skills and stuff like that in a position where he is in a higher level of authority. He doesn't have to be the number one person, but I think we need him as the number two person, because that's exactly what he's been doing in the last year or so anyway. He does a fine job. End of absurd.
Dave, not to cut you off, but to stay on focus, we are, Public Works is a department of 3. So when you have a Director of Public Works and a project manager, I'm essentially a number 2. So that's not going to change regardless of what titling there is. So to move away from any current staff discussions or anything related to anyone's current position, I think the focus should be on the language, because whether Tim's here or somebody else is here, the focus is the titling, not the individual in the position. So
I understand that, but this was the rules that we have to follow here, because that is the only ones we can follow. And I just wanted to make it a little clearer, because that's effectively what we're doing. I agree with that's what you're doing, but I think we need to go ahead and say it's the way we should be doing. So I would like to put that language so we start learning how to follow our own ordinances. We haven't filled a city engineer for a gazillion years because nobody says that this really has to be followed in the first place. And I think we need to fix that.
Further discussion?
Crickets.
So I have a question, I guess. So was this triggered, this review, due to other Tim's resignation, or why does this come up now if we haven't had this role filled for whatever it is, 23 years? Are we anticipating we need to fill it, or?
So are you referring specifically to the civil engineer piece of the language?
Well, maybe.
Okay,
Yeah.
because the public works, the director of public works, that is an open position that
Right.
we will fill. And as you look through the language, the duty of the public works director is somewhat reinvigorated with a little bit more responsibility.
Right.
And the city engineer piece of it is removed. So the conversation when I stepped into this scene and started first hearing about it is when an alderman brought it forward and saying, we have this opening, shouldn't we fill it? And so, as we do with a lot of codes, for example, we're looking at ordinances regarding fences. They haven't been updated or reinvigorated in decades. And so that's under review and rewrite right now as this.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the departure of the previous director is irrelevant to the conversation or what's being presented to clean up or modify the different sections of code as it relates to director of public works and city engineer.
Okay.
So it's kind of in conjunction too with a city treasurer that's in before Ways and Means Commission and the finance. So previously, our finance director, Betty Cotner, was also a resident. So kind of quasi filled that role as city treasurer / finance director. And I think just timing of, the changeover in that position and then cleaning up the current language in the code.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So to summarize here, Dave, what you're saying is you feel like the language that there needs to be an engineer in that capacity, correct? Whereas the rest of, or not the rest, but the proposed language is saying, hey, look at some of these other neighboring cities. They're larger than us. However, they don't have a public works director that is also an engineer. But you're saying that he should be an engineer, Dave, or are you saying there should be a resident?
Yeah, real quick, Tony, that is not the information that Pam presented. It just, the position of city engineer is not held but all of those municipalities that she listed off, the director of public works is a PE. And our language in this modified code will still require Town and Country's director of public works to be a PE.
Oh, okay.
So that requirement is all still in there. It's just eliminating the redundancy of having a director of public works that's a PE and then a city engineer that is a resident be a PE to basically collaborate on the exact same thing that's happening. And I think that the city attorney would probably opine that when you have a city employee that's being paid, that's a PE that can render an opinion versus a resident that is either a volunteer or is not necessarily on the payroll, that you're kind of opening yourself up, I think, for some conflicts or issues in that venue.
I agree. So Dave, you think that the city should still have to where there's a resident engineer? Is that my understanding, Dave?
Well, it's The fact that these other communities, some of them larger than us, that don't require it because their PEs are hard to come by and they're expensive.
Yeah. That's,
But we're taking care of that if we properly manage HR Green, as an example.
Mhm.
So I don't see it's necessary that you have to have that. I can, just because you have a PE doesn't mean you're going to do a better job, as witnessed by the guy who no longer is in that position. He let that go for 7 years. Nobody even knew it. So, and it didn't mean anything, whether he was a PE or not. It doesn't. So I don't think it's particularly important. The only reason for you need the expertise, which we can hire through HR Green, is somebody who can go ahead and tell us things we don't know, like, is this on a limestone quarry and things of that nature there, and so forth. And that's what we do when we vet people who do our projects. We only go with people we know who can do the job. And because we can hire and fire them, we know that we can get it done properly. So we don't need a PE in our, from what I got now here, we do not need a PE because we can get one, and we can get one we can control better than one we think we can, but really isn't delivering.
And Dave,
Makes
to
sense.
that point, under Director of Public Works qualifications, I think maybe a good addition to that would be to add that the PE, the Public Works Director PE, must maintain good standing with the license throughout the employment, which is not currently in the language.
Yes. If we're going to make a requirement, we got to back it up. Yes, right.
Right. So we don't come across
Right.
that situation again.
But the fact that the previous one had one and it didn't have one didn't mount to very much, because the problems we had still occurred one way or the other.
Well,
And that-
Dave, just a real, I think that once these code amendments, we make a recommendation and go to the board, that if the board collectively had a direction that they wanted to eliminate the requirement for a PE as it relates to the Director of Public Works, they could make that amendment. But I'm not sure that that's a recommendation that we want to send to the board. I think that the requirement for the director to have a PE to go to the Board of Aldermen is probably a good direction from this commission. And then we still have the belt and suspenders of a director with a PE and our on-call engineering contractor with HR Green, so that if there is the need or want to have a independent evaluation for a traffic study, for a development of Principia, or a massive subdivision development, we have that on-call engineering firm that we can then go to.
Do we, in this situation here, do we have any language that says that a contractor like HR Green that does our work for us has to have PEs? Is that a requirement?
Well, yeah, anytime that they're going to do any engineering work as the state statute requires, they have to be
Okay,
certified.
so that's a state requirement.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so that's taken care of if we follow the state laws. So it doesn't make any difference whether we make ours a PE requirement or not. It doesn't do any good, any particular good, because we're going to go ahead and get that PE experience from the people we hire to do specific tasks.
And can I ask a quick question? So,
Yes.
and I'm assuming that we have this knowledge, but do we have the subject matter expertise internally if we hire a entity with a PE that we understand what they're talking about and can validate whatever they're proposing seems logical, if that makes sense? I mean, as lay people,
With the current
Can we-
staff that we have, yes, which
Okay.
is one staff member, but yes. And then, so with the addition of a director that is a PE, that adds to the ability to quantify or clarify any of the information that they submit.
Okay.
Now, I understand there's a lot of facets in there. So when we employ for a stormwater project and you have a hydraulic engineer that's providing those hydraulic calculations, although we can review, still currently we can review those calculations. You're not going to have, unless you have somebody that spent a number of years in MSD, they're not, that's not going to be really in their wheelhouse. It's more of a kind of an overall broad knowledge. But being in the industry long enough, yes, we have the capabilities to review and concur with the information provided.
Okay.
Further discussion? I have one additional consideration to the amendment of the language under the Director of Public Works. And it's just dovetailing off of what Dave is sharing. I would change, I changed provision 6 under duties and powers. I'd make that 7 and put provide number 6 as to provide the technical advice to planning and zoning and public works commissions. So we ensure that person holding that position is advising both commissions at their appropriate meetings.
You're saying then that you're going to have him advise both the Planning and Zoning and the Public Works Commission?
Yes, what's your opinion on that?
That's a good idea.
Further discussion? If there's not further discussion, I'd like to make a motion to recommend the draft ordinance with the additional language under qualifications that the Director of Public Works must maintain good standing with his or her license throughout the employment, and with the amendment under duties, adding number 6 to provide technical advice to the Planning and Zoning and Public Works Commission. Do I have a motion to approve?
I so move.
Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Tim, did you get both the
Who
first
was
and
the
second?
second? Who was the
I don't-
second?
It was me.
Tony was the second.
I got it.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, we are on the topic of old business and seeing none. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tim. Seeing none, I'm going to move on to our discussion item.
Yep.
Our discussion item is section A, the location benefit identification scale for our stormwater projects. Tim, do you want to start the conversation there, and then we'll open it up to the floor?
Sure. Part of Pam's first few weeks as Public Works Commission Chairman, we discussed many topics, and one of which that always comes up and we spend a lot of time on is our stormwater program. So through the location benefit index scale, which is what we rank most of our projects on, or all of our projects and properties that are impacted, the discussion of providing, we've had several conversations of, do we look at the length of time that a project's been identified? And we've beaten that against the wall numerous times through this commission, and it's basically come back that, hey, the ones that are in the worst shape are the ones we should be addressing first. Doesn't matter if they were identified in 2010 or 2019, worst is worse. So one of the things that Pam and I had discussed and that she brought up is providing some additional benefit and focus on any projects that provide either local detention or some sort of regional detention to help out a watershed as a whole, and that we should really probably be quantifying that as part of our point system to then allow those projects to move up the list. So even if a project might be sitting mid-level, but that property owner is going to allow us to use their property to use or do some sort of detention or regional detention, that should be quantified, and that should be a project that we want to approach sooner than later, because as opposed to providing individual help or individual support, something that provides community support or regional support is those are the projects we should really be focusing on. So we don't currently have anything in our location benefit index. So we just wanted to have that discussion with the commission to see if that was something the commission agreed with, if they felt that that's something we should continue to pursue, and then at a later date, once we come up with whatever that matrix or point system is, we can then bring it back to look at, modifying the current and existing code. So we have a few projects that either we've completed or we're currently working on where we've been able to do some of that regional detention. Tom is right next door to one of them. So we did the Corrington Court project that utilized the rear yard of House on Clayton, where we put in some larger detention basins, more than what is detained or needed for those individual properties, which has helped out downstream. We have another one that we're currently paused on design on the Summerhill East, where we will be looking at doing a large underground detention area on Glazeview that will help in Summerhill and also modify some of the stuff that's in Templeton. We're doing a project now on Whitestable and Spruce Pond that currently had 0 detention in it, and we've modified that pond to get some storage. So projects like that help out, multiple properties downstream or the watershed as a whole is what we're contemplating.
Yeah, and so just to add on before we open up for discussion. So look, this was created in 2010 by Tim. I believe you created the scale.
Not me. No, I wasn't with the city then. So the Public Works Commission is the one.
Public Works. Okay.
Yeah. So we had several members: Bob Tuckett, Bob Wunderlich, Herman Metz, the former chairman Tim Welby, and the former director of Public Works Greg Wilde were all involved in the creation of this program.
Right. Okay. So, and the scale is spot on in many categories, but it's been now a decade, and what have we learned? And should those properties who benefit more than just their own, should they gain a little more in the point scale? Or if they're helping out the watershed? Dave?
What we've learned from the Rehnquist issues up and down Mason Road, and I was part of that, is that we need to have this kind of expertise into the game much sooner than we do. We wait too late before we really get involved. In some cases, we don't get involved until after something is done on a site or a property that shouldn't be done until we really make sure that it's already done. In other words, we go ahead and clear the lot, and then we find out that he's filling in the lady south of him. Well, anybody who had seen it before he had a chance to do that, an engineer would have noticed that, hey, you can't go ahead and do anything here until you find out about what's going on underground, because you have some sinkholes and things like that. And so we need to have, I'm all for this. I just want to put it into upfront, more into the whole process, so we can identify problems before we create them and then have to go back and fix them.
Gotcha. But with the problems in the stormwater projects that we currently have, this will be an undertaking for Tim and his team. That'll take some time if they take a moment to look at this scale and reevaluate the point system. So the question on the floor is, do we believe that adds value to our stormwater project and a good use of the Tim's time and his staff's time?
Yes, I think so, but I'm saying that's, if it's good for that, it should be good for other projects, just like general development. So we don't have to go in and after the fact and fix things. So I'm expanding the scope of this. It's
Okay.
saying it's for storm water because that's where we're getting the money for specific projects and stuff like that. We ought to be doing that for all projects, not just the stormwater ones. Town center being an example for that.
Gotcha.
Right.
Further discussion?
Are they just, maybe this has something to do with it or not, but I was down, I was looking at a lot of the new homes off of Topping Road. Okay.
Yeah.
The streets off of Topping, lots of new construction, as we know, down in their individual homes. And just looking at these homes where they're at and the houses down below them. And and I know they have to go through this process and everything, but I'm looking at some of these and I'm saying, wow, is the engineering studies in that, Tim, are they really going over what's going to happen here potentially with a lot of these homes? Because I don't know, just looking at it, seems like they're going to have to there's going to have to be some work done by the contractor, the general contractor, I think, to really control runoff, et cetera, et cetera. Now that may be all being done. I was just curious. I was just kind of looking at a lot of things down there and I thought, wow. So my question is, Tim, is all this go into with the contractor when he goes for his site plans and everything to build a home like that?
Yeah, so and this is like two different topics that we're talking about versus the house construction versus the stormwater. But and I get Dave's point of, they all converge at some point, because when the house is done being built, we're dealing with stormwater afterwards. Yeah, that's part of the staff's review of residential development, is to look at the existing contours, the existing conditions of the 1-story, 2,500 square foot ranch, and then what the proposed new construction is, what the mitigation system is, where the mitigation system's located, what other grading is going to occur to help reduce and or prevent issues downstream. So those are all things that are evaluated. Tony's built a few homes in town, and he can probably tell you that we scrutinize over those pretty good. And we've got our building inspectors that are out there weekly inspecting the construction sites, siltation fence control, runoff control. If there happens to be a design that on paper, is sufficient, but then in actual construction and practice isn't working, we make those builders, make adjustments. We'll have those builders have their engineers redesign, different mitigation steps to lessen the disturbance and or impact of the runoff from the property. So, some are easier projects than others. Some construction sites are more difficult. So it's just it's an ongoing process that we currently undertake.
Right. And the most recent example would be that of the Covenant Presbyterian Church, where we took a closer look at it, of the stormwater. And Tim went out there and met with the Presbyterian Church's team, and we talked about mitigation and added that amendment to the ordinance that we just passed at the previous Board of Aldermen meeting. So it is top of mind, I think, in planning and zoning and with the Board of Aldermen as these new projects come through, especially when you have over 45 projects on your stormwater list, over, a little over $9 million worth of projects, where we're only clearing 1 or 2 a year. And how do we work through those? Well, to Dave's point, we work through them without creating them. And so I think that there is an awareness that I've experienced, over the past year with this topic.
Cool.
Well, given it all flows downhill, and I'm sitting at the bottom of the hill here in Thornhill, and we have to say that the management of construction along Old Colony and all that ended up Well, I got a swimming pool now full of dirt, and we've protected the berm and all around it and stuff like that, but that still wasn't good enough. And because you can only do so much on the site, you have to look at the whole watershed, and the upstream part of the watershed was flat out ignored, and the people in Thornhill or don't get any input on it specifically until we already see it come flowing down and doing its damage. We have that same situation right now with the property right across the street from my house here, up on the top of the hill. That's at Lockenheath. It's the Irma's property on the top of the hill. And I've already spoken before the planning and zoning, but I do it through one of these things here. I can only listen to it. I couldn't ask questions or anything else like that. And we are just not getting into the game soon enough, and that is where a lot of our problems are.
Well, I will message that back to our alderman representative who sits on planning and zoning. But I appreciate everything that you're sharing with us, but to address the discussion item at hand, because it will take a lot of staff's time if they reevaluate this scale. Tim, since this is a discussion, I don't know, do you want to take a vote? Do you want me to take a vote on this?
Well,
Or do you want
I don't think, yeah, I don't think we need a formal first and second and vote.
Okay.
Just, if just getting the feedback, if we kind of have the general consensus that this is something that the commission thinks is a positive, then this is going to be a longer process. So it's going to take us, we likely won't implement it in 2020, the new location benefit index. So we will start working through that process, and then we'll start to try to incorporate that through we will require a code codification first, and a code change through the board. So we'll have to go through that step once we get the new point system worked out. We'll need to have that codified, and then it may, possibly be something that we can incorporate into the 2021 cost benefit analysis, where everything is, shuffled and re-ranked depending on what we find.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think it's a good idea.
I agree. I think it's a great idea that if you're lower on the totem pole, but you're benefiting the greater good, that you move up.
And so would we approach these people that are moving up and say, we can move you up if you cooperate and make this a larger project? Now, logistically, how would that, because I would imagine the individual homeowner doesn't understand that they could do something that would help the whole watershed.
Yeah, I think so. What we would first do is we would first identify the existing projects that we have that provides this benefit. So if it currently is a planned project and it provides the additional detention or retention for local or regional watershed, then those would automatically go up. Okay. Then moving forward, any property owner that is hovering middle of the list or lower the list, that once we start to reevaluate them on the 3-year cycle where they reach out to the city, then we can provide them out. Currently, the option now that property owners have to move up the list is either a change in condition, a change in scope, or they contribute financially, and that's how they can move up the list. But this would give them an additional option of, hey, you can use, I've got my 2-acre parcel, and I've got this erosion or this issue. You can take a half an acre and create some sort of detention out of it. Which would then provide them the additional points.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So that is it on our agenda this evening, gentlemen. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that.
Nobody wants to leave.
Sorry, I hope you had I hope you had a quorum.
We did.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got horribly tied up.
That's okay, Bob. You're the new
All right.
vice chair.
That's it. You got voluntold.
Thanks for your help today too, Tim.
No problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so did we get it? I didn't hear. Did we get a second?
I think so.
I think Tom seconded.
Okay, thanks, everybody. It was a really good meeting. I appreciate your time.
Okay.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you,
Good
Tim.
night.
Yep.
Good night.
Good night.
Hey, Dave,
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask you, what engineer buys a house at the bottom of the hill where all the trees are?
Hey, Tim, I was thinking the same thing. I didn't want to say anything.
I'm glad I didn't sign off yet.
Hey, one thing that this job has taught me, when my kids are looking for houses and stuff, I'm like
Bye at the top of the
crazy,
hill.
crazy on it. Yes. You
Well,
always
what-
want to
you
be
know,
high.
At least my house isn't in the floodplain. Torbert's behind me. He's replacing his second furnace in the last 2 years.
Oh,
He's in the floodplain.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
these
a
last
shame.
weeks have been
All
beneficial.
right.
Thank you all.
Bye.